Hello, my friends. You have reached Season 10, Episode 8 of The Occasional Podcast. And what you just heard in the intro was, yes, another AI-generated song. And I just wanted to put that one on in the beginning and reflect and say, obviously, there's a genre type going on there. But this is one of the very few songs of that original batch that I created that didn't kind of really sync up with the line, The Occasional Podcast, as well as the others. Actually, it feels quite shoehorned in at the end there. Like they're just like, oh, almost forgot. The computer almost forgot to include the little tag. But it's in there. The lyrics are somewhat sensical to the idea of introducing a podcast. But there you are, another AI-generated song. None of that was real. And I'm a little critical of it. But you know what? We got a couple more to go through in the upcoming episodes. So the best is yet to come. And speaking of the best is yet to come, we have a very special treat for everyone coming up very soon. I can't announce it just yet, but in the coming weeks, we have a new collaboration that's going to come out. So keep your eyes out for that. That, of course, helps support us here at the podcast and, of course, keeps the wheels from falling off the cart and keeps us running down the road. Whatever metaphor you want to throw in there, it's very helpful, and we appreciate that greatly. Also, today is a little bit of like not a double header, but you could almost say a triple header, but I don't think that's a thing. Maybe it is a thing. I've never seen one in baseball, but maybe. And it's ultimately dispelling audiophile myths with our friends from SVS. And then the guys stick around, Nick and Gary stick around for a little bit and discuss their new flagship line for them. But the biggest floor standard they made in the line actually has like a ton of subs integrated into it because they were traditionally a sub company. So that's like really fun. And then, of course, at the end, we just went to a small local show here in the San Francisco area called the California Audio Show. It's back. It was around for a while and, of course, took a hiatus during the pandemic, but now it's back for CAS 2024, and our friends Mike and Tristan join us for that recap, recorded live at the show like we do. So we got 3 wonderful things to talk about. Can't wait to get to it. And again, thank you guys for all the support, and keep an eye out for the new merch on the way. And have a great freaking day, guys. As we say, on with the show. Here we go. Dispelling audio myths, the new SVS flagship, and CAS 2024 hi-fi highlights and best of show. Our friends at ZMF Headphones are sponsors of today's episode. ZMF is a curated collection of various sounds and styles in the form of dynamic and planar magnetic wood headphones, designed by founder Zach Merbach since 2011. ZMF has garnered an A+ recommended component in Stereophile, Headphone of the Year on Headphonics.com, and been a 2-time winner of the SBAF Golden Schlong Award. ZMF Headphones. That's the letter ZMF HEADPHONES.com. ZMF Headphones is the place to go to check out ZMF's collection and learn more. ZMF, traditional craft and modern acoustics. Today's episode is also sponsored by Shit Audio. Shit Audio designs and builds audio components in California and Texas. Based in Valencia and Corpus Christi, their wide line of amps, DACs, and audio accessories fit any budget, starting at $49. For a full rundown of all their products, visit shit.com or stop by their retail store in Old Newhall, just north of Los Angeles. That's SCHIIT.com. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. Another episode of The Occasional Podcast. This week, joined by Gary Yakubian and Nick Brown from SVS, 2 of my favorite guys to see at a show. How are you guys doing today?
Doing excellent.
Brian, you're one of our favorite guys. Good to be here.
You're a road warrior, Brian.
You know, these guys, they do audio shows like it should be done. I see them at almost every show, and they always tuck you guys into the very back corner because you're out there having a good time. You're out there really showing people how you can rock and roll with a sub, but you know, you still do the finesse thing, but
Because sometimes we create mayhem, Brian, and they want mayhem isolated in some of these events. But it's not just, as you point out, it's not just mayhem. We go for the refinement and the accuracy as well.
Some people, you might say, when you go to an audio show, some of the rooms can be a little stiff. It's part of the thing. There's a lot of money being spent, and people are serious. And there is a seriousness that goes on. But when you get to your corner of the woods, I feel like there is a seriousness. You guys make serious audio, but there's also a nice layer of fun and entertainment to be had in your room that isn't always present in every room. That's what I like about it when I see you guys. So I know you're having fun over there. It's not a question about it.
Thanks for acknowledging.
And I think sometimes the fun part gets lost in the audiophile hobby sometimes, and a lot of folks maybe take themselves too seriously. And we want to just let people know, we love music, we love movies, we want to share some of our favorite tracks. We do requests at a lot of these shows, so we're not scared to put out songs that maybe other people use as torture tracks, and it's just it makes our days go by better, and I think it makes it more fun for the crowds as well.
And also one of the very few companies that are brave enough to do, generally speaking, I've seen you do both, but you do surround sound, multi-channel systems sometimes, and I've been in many shows where it's the only one. So I also appreciate that too, that you kind of at least tip your hat a little bit to those guys. We're not here to talk about audio shows today. We're here to talk about dispelling some audiophile myths. And I kind of wanted to tip it over to you guys to just get your perspective on, and this is a pretty broad topic that I know a lot of people have tackled in the past, but from your perspective, you see a lot of audiophiles, you see the market in a really broad sense, and I'm curious as to what you think might be some of the biggest myths that you could dispel and how things are kind of done traditionally speaking. We all know there's a lot of people out there, and it's a diverse crowd. But there are some audiophile traditional way of thinking that I feel like it might be helpful to address. So if you guys just want to kind of kick off with your first one that you think might be helpful for the audience to hear, what would you say that is?
Well, I'll go first, Gary, if you don't mind. And this
Nick,
is one of the things that we talk about a lot of our events that we do with dealer partners around the country is sort of this redefining what it means to be an audiophile. We call it the modern audiophile because, again, I think that term has carried with it maybe a bit of a stigma or some stereotypes that are worth dispelling. And, one of the ones that I always gravitate to is the idea of content and what audiophiles are really into. Specifically digital music. I think there's this sort of purist attitude with some people outside the community who are like, oh, you have to be sitting in the sweet spot by yourself, listening to a vinyl record or, some very pure method of playback. Whereas I think now, whether you're into a high performance home theater system with all the amazing, Dolby Atmos streaming that's available from some of the, the streaming platforms, or even high res music from Qobuz, from Tidal, having millions and millions of songs at your fingertips, that's a very appealing thing, especially when it's lossless, to be able to hear whatever you want and get that sort of variety into your system. And so that's where I think, this idea that it has to be this, super pure content source, maybe that's a myth that's ready to go away, and we can start embracing some home theater fans and even gamers to some extent, because if you've played some of these video games, like they are as immersive as any kind of home cinema experience that you can get, or music. They really sort of whisk you away to being inside the game. So that's one that I would start with as far as something that could probably be dispelled now.
Well, I'll just kind of echo that in the sense that there's this sort of canon of tracks that get used at these shows, and if you have the time to go from room to room, you just hear the same stuff, and I do understand choosing well recorded things that you're familiar with. There's a benefit to that, but it does kind of suck the life out of it when you say it can only be this and it can't be that, when that might be the content that you enjoy the most. So we're very unjudgmental about what content people enjoy the most. And your audiophile system should deliver the content you enjoy the most, the way the producer of that content, the artist, intended for you to experience it. And if as close as possible to that is, to me, a great audiophile experience.
And I think, too, that part of that stigma started with digital audio that didn't sound so great when digital audio was first introduced. We talked about this on the podcast before, but there was a promise of this is perfection. And then when people heard it, there was a disconnect because it didn't sound as good a lot of times. And this is like early CD players, and the CD I'm referring to specifically. Really, they had the capture method down, but the playback digital decoding wasn't quite there. And I do think that most of those hurdles have kind of been resolved at this point. You can get really good digital audio from really good source material now, and it took a while, and it's still a work in progress, but it's a lot of strides have made even in the last 5 years. I'd say if you've been in this hobby 10 years and you thought all digital audio was terrible, and you should give it another listen. You should give it another listen right now and do lossless, just like Nick was talking about, and get a nice DAC and get all this stuff together, and you might be surprised how far we've come as a society with digital audio. So that's like a whoo! I like that part. I like that a lot.
Oh, and the technology, both in terms of the as you point out, the quality of the content itself has improved dramatically. We have high res, but then the quality of the delivery systems, again, as you point out, a high quality DAC. Some of the reason why people didn't enjoy digital content was their delivery system wasn't ready for that content. It's funny to me that whereas I've been doing this a really long time, Brian, and everyone, the audiophiles used to complain about CDs. Now there's this tangent of audiophiles that only like CDs in terms of the realm of digital content.
Yep.
And I'm like, really? Is this really happening? That now CDs are better than high res? And to me, it's just about, hey, is it true to what the artist, the producer intended? If you can get there with a high quality delivery system, then it's doing its job.
I would even dial it back a little bit more. I know this is very abstract in a way, but if it's making you happy, I feel like that's also a goal. Like if it's true to what the artist
it's a hobby.
Intended,
you think?
Yeah. So yeah, I do think that. I do think too that like sometimes I've been in the recording studio a little bit. I like to call myself like a recovering musician, but I don't. The artist's vision, I think that sometimes can be confused because a lot of the time the artists themselves, they're involved in the creation, but there's a mastering engineer and they approve these steps, but they don't have like the know-how from end to end. So like that idea of an artist's vision, I feel like gets diluted from artist to artist. Some can be completely wrapped up into the vision, the end result, and some just write songs, So I think they're all involved in the process, but to what extent they are involved in this the tonal vision at the end, I think is a little more varied. But in any case, if you're having fun, it's your thing. And if you go for a specific sound and you're looking for a tonality, be it like with tubes or solid state, that is also acceptable, that there is not a right way to do it. And everyone should rely a little bit more, I think, on perhaps what makes them happy. And if the measurements make you happy, then do that. I'm actually not even arguing against just objective versus subjective. If you believe that the measurements lead you to a path of happiness, then I say do that. Gary, do you have any kind of insight on your thoughts on measurements and how those play into the buying process in your experience?
Well, to me, you'd be foolish, in my opinion, to rely solely on measurements, but you'd also be foolish to rely solely on listening. And the way we create our products, all of them, is a combination of measurement and listening. Even in the final voicing that I'm always a part of, I was talking to Nick about this a few days ago. I've probably experienced a couple hundred measurements of just one product before we release it. And we listen, we make adjustments, we measure what the consequences of those adjustments are, and then we listen again. And that is a very iterative process. It's difficult, but one without the other would not be the sufficient rigor to create a great product experience.
Yeah.
And I
like
also
that.
want to comment
I
on
like
your
that
point
approach.
about having fun, because I totally agree with you. And when I'm saying what the artist intended, I'm trying to point to a sort of satisfying experience of that content, whatever it is. Like I find myself going into my main listening area. I've talked to the team about this, and I'm listening to content that I love. And is the system satisfying me with the joy that I know is possible in that content? If it is, then I'm thrilled. I'm happy about it. Which we're having a lot of fun with our. I know we're going to talk a little bit about the new flagship speakers, and they're giving me that kind of joy where I'm able to sort of experience them with my content that I adore, and hearing it the way that it satisfies me with the joy that it delivers.
One of the other kind of audiophile myths that we were talking about before we started to be kind of an interesting topic now, especially because Gary, you mentioned that you have a new speaker coming out. It's one of the more expensive ones you've ever produced under this brand. And we often talk about how much money needs to be spent on each particular product. I find it interesting because this new flagship of yours, it's the most expensive, but it's not even close to being the most expensive speaker out there. It's not even close to being what I think a lot of audiophiles would think is expensive for a speaker. So I like that idea. But Nick, what do you kind of think about, what's your take on how much people need to spend to be considered like audiophiles or just budgeting in general?
Yeah, I mean,
like
I think there's, I think that's what keeps a lot of people away from the hobby is they have this sense that, you know what, there's so much diminishing returns once you cross a certain price threshold. And I think maybe to some degree that's true, but you're really going to get a massive step up in performance when you go from, you know, say our Prime Pinnacle, which is roughly $1,900 a pair, to, you know, the Ultra Evolution Titan, which is $4,000 a pair. Like, you will get double the experience, in my opinion. And so when you have this idea that, you know, and actually a great example is at one of these audio shows, you know, somebody came up and he's like, well, I won't even start my component search unless it's at least $25,000. And to me, that's completely absurd. Like, if you're going into that and you're preaching that you cannot be an audiophile unless you have this certain price entry point, then I think you're doing more harm than good. And, you know, from our perspective, we've always tried to provide performance that is far exceeding what you're paying for the price and relative to the other products in the market. And that's always been, you know, a big part of our vision. And so, you know, to be able to deliver that, but also deliver a message that, you know, more people can have this in their homes, and the experiences you're going to get compared to, you know, an entry level audio product is vast. And I think that's where, you know, that it really becomes a reflection of both what the brand is trying to accomplish, but, you know, what the consumer is looking to get out of their content, and you know, that experience that truly takes it to a like being there, or that suspension of disbelief where now you're actually feeling like you're in the studio, you're, you know, in the middle of an action movie, something like that. So, you know, I feel like when people start their journey, you know, having a nice pair of, you know, stereo wireless speakers to connect to your TV or to do some 2-channel listening, you know, maybe they're $500,000 a pair. That will give them a taste, but then there's, you know, certainly a lot of room to grow from there. And we just want people to know that no matter where you start, if you have that passion for the content and you want it to become, you know, something better, in our eyes, you qualify as an audiophile. And I think that's where, again, it seems really harmful to the industry to put these sort of benchmarks or to have these, you know, lines in the sand where you actually can become a true audiophile based on, you know, some arbitrary price point.
The purest idea of the hobby is a love of high fidelity and a love of sound and a love of music. And then we get a little bit lost sometimes in the idea of luxury. It's like, oh, luxury for luxury's sake, or buying things for a price point or some type of badge earned because of money spent. I don't think that, you're right, behooves us as much as if we focus on the things that make everyone happy. And again, if it makes you happy to spend that much money because it's your thing, I don't fault those people either. But again, it's about, you know, doing this thing and finding the love and sharing it with fellow audiophiles, I think is great. Some of the greatest stuff happens, the shared minds at audio shows. You hear conversations of people, you know, and that don't get too siloed in their own personal experience, and they get to share that experience with others, and it's a fun group to be a part of. It really comes down to it. which you might not always pick up online, is what I'm getting at. You know what I mean?
No doubt, Brian. And, I think where, I'll deviate a little bit is I think the gear can be a lot of fun. Like we talk about the music and the content as certainly the reason why you invest in, better quality gear. But, going through that process, listening to different types of speakers, different styles of amps, like that's part of the journey. And I don't, want to take anything away from that where it's all about price to performance, because it's really not. Like if you have expendable income, certainly it's, it's not that much different than, watch collecting or being into luxury cars. Like they're aspirational purchases. So you have every right to spend as much money as you want to get the best performance or to get the sound that's, best for your ears. So I certainly don't want to take away anything from people who want to invest in, they're willing to spend X amount of money to get that 1% improvement in performance. Because again, I think that's part of the fun there, and the different technologies and just kind of understanding, what's best for you personally. And again, that's something that we talk about a lot is like, even if you're not necessarily going to buy an SVS this or that, like, just be part of the journey and tell people how much fun it is. And the tweaking part, the back end adjustments to calibration, like that's all, part of what makes this hobby interesting. And frankly, it's a healthy hobby too. You're not doing any damage to anything other than, potentially your pocketbook. So, we like to, get people just excited about, everything they can do with it.
Yeah, you should tell that to my mountain biking friends, the downhill mountain biking guys. I feel like they get injuries about every 3 or 4 years. You're due for one. I never heard of anybody getting injured listening to an audio system. That's just coming from an old man. That's coming from an old man these days. Okay, Nick, and then what is our last tip for audiophiles that might dispel a myth or two that you've come across?
So I think maybe this one has reached its tipping point already, but the idea that on some level subwoofers are not meant for audiophile, like 2-channel hi-fi systems. Like I think nothing could be further than the truth, especially with sealed cabinet designs and how transient they are in terms of their response and how, accurate they can be in really filling in those low frequencies. And the way that, now with some of the app control, at least with SVS, you're able to get them dialed in on like a molecular level blending. So it's, as seamless as could possibly be a transition between the speakers. To me, that's one that I think probably it's already started to become overcome as far as a myth. But I think there still are some, purists out there who would say, don't ever add a subwoofer to your system. It's only going to have negative effects, and I don't think anything could be further from the truth. As long as you get the right kind of subwoofer and you're not, using some sort of compromise solution or something that doesn't match well with your speakers.
Yeah, and I want to encourage the listeners to check out Subwoofers in 2-Channel, our podcast that we previously did, for like a super deep dive on how and why a subwoofer could be, really add to your 2-channel system. Because I thought I knew a little bit about the subject, but after hearing and interviewing with that one, I was blown away by the options available for adding a subwoofer into your 2-channel where you can really fine-tune the system. It's not always the easiest thing, but correct me if I'm wrong, Nick and Gary, you guys did kind of come up with a product that would make it a little bit easier for people with like legacy vintage maybe amplifiers that don't have a sub out. Can you tell me a little bit about that product that you just kind of...
Some products don't have a sub out, and many products don't have a preamp out at all. A subwoofer can take your preamp output or your subwoofer output, but a lot of great products don't have that. And to your point about 2-channel being really more joyful with a subwoofer, I think this is a problem solver that allows a person who is enjoying their 2-channel system but wants that final couple of octaves of bass available to them. Now they have it. They have the ability to have the complete experience. The product is relatively affordable, but we absolutely committed ourselves to pristine, accurate response so that it doesn't do more harm than good.
Yeah, and the product we're talking about is our SVS SoundPath speaker level subwoofer adapter, and it's like all of our SoundPath accessories. It's a true problem solver. We were talking about how it adds basically line level output to components, a lot of legacy components that only have speaker level, which opens up a lot of opportunities. But, we have other solutions in the sound path line, like a wireless adapter. If you want to add a subwoofer wirelessly, an isolation system that will allow you to decouple the subwoofer from the room and really give you cleaner response, get rid of some of those artifacts that maybe are created within the room, like rattling windows, things like that. And so, that's part of what our journey is here as a brand, is to create these solutions that just allow people to solve problems that may exist within their system, or with some of the components that they have.
All right, guys, I've been waiting all episode to chat about this. The new speaker, what's the name on the new flagship speaker? Because I don't know if you guys know this about me, but I love a new flagship. New flagships to me, especially in the speaker realm, mean you guys are showing what you guys can do, what a brand can really do in terms of, hey, we're going to raise the cost a little bit, but we want to raise our standard as well, like the overall standard of your sonic retrieval, right? Tell me a little bit about the new flagship, what you guys decided to call it, how it's broken out, and what you wanted to achieve when you all sat down around the big round table or whoever and said, hey, we're doing something that's going to be a new representation of the best we can make.
Well, I'll give a quick little intro because this is a whole flagship series. This is not just a single model, and it was the most ambitious product launch SVS has ever done. We really tried to leave no stone unturned and completely reinventing what was possible with a speaker from SVS. And so I would argue there's 3 flagship towers, although there's only one official. It's the SVS Ultra Evolution Pinnacle. Then we have the Titan, and then we have the tower below that. They all share a very similar form factor and the same technology within them that Gary can talk about here in a little bit. But we had 2 bookshelf speakers as well, a larger one and a smaller one called the Nano, a true 3-way center channel. Our Ultra Elevation, which is a height effect speaker that can be mounted to the wall or the ceiling to bring in Dolby Atmos, or even on its side as a surround, but primarily it's used in an Atmos setting. This is 7 new models that we've launched, and again, it's been really revelatory for the brand to see just how well they've been embraced. But Gary can speak a little bit more to the vision, I think, behind why we did it this way and what people can expect.
Our mission, we always start with everything we can think of when we launch a new series. Everything we can think of, everything we have learned since the last one, and we always start at the top, because we want to trickle down all those things we learned with our flagship products to each next subsequent product launch, which we will do. The things we learned about speaker technology in the years since our Prime series were launched, we put everything we learned. Brian, we didn't start really with a price point so much as we started with all the things we wanted to incorporate and the experience we wanted to generate. And then the price obviously ended up being what it needed to be. But since we're such a lean machine, we typically surprise and hopefully delight people with the level of technology and performance they get at the price ranges we are at, even when it's, you're right, the most expensive product we've ever had. Topping out at $5,000 for a pair of our Pinnacle, Ultra Evolution Pinnacle towers.
But now when it comes to that speaker, you guys have done a lot of subwoofers in the past. I think that you are known for all speakers, but you have a lot of brand equity, they say, in the subwoofer realm. How did you guys decide what you were going to do in the subwoofer department of the new Pinnacle? Because I know it has quite a bit of substance, you could say, to the big one on the new shelf.
That was a nice pun there, Brian.
Yeah.
I like that. Substance. No, we certainly we didn't. We have the legacy of being a world-class subwoofer manufacturer, and actually some of the technology within the 3 tower models, the Pinnacle, Titan, and the Tower, was taken from our 3000 micro subwoofer. If you look at the cabinet, it's got woofers on the front, and then there's corresponding woofers on the rear panel of the speaker as well, and they're on what's called a force balanced array. So the woofers move in and they move out together. And within the cabinet, you get basically a completely inert setting because, the motion of the drivers is essentially canceling each other out. So you're getting no resonance. You're not getting any sort of vibrational energy. It's a completely inert internal cabinet. But when you're looking outside the cabinet, or listening, I should say, you essentially have 8 woofers all firing in different directions throughout the room when you have a pair of these towers towed in. And what that gives you is nice even bass response, nice authoritative bass throughout the listening area. You're not as susceptible to those peaks and nulls. The pinnacle extends down to about 23 hertz, so it's as close to a full range speaker as you can possibly get. And really, you're not lacking for low frequencies, although it's still a very balanced speaker with some of the other technology that we put into it. But we know, we have this pedigree with subwoofers, and so we wanted to take a little bit of our best technology from this micro subwoofer, which is a magic trick in its own right, and integrate that into these speakers. And I think it really applied itself well to having, again, that nice authoritative, crisp transient bass, but also having it evenly distributed throughout the room, and that was something that was important for us.
So, a little bit of a trick question here. Have you hooked up one of your giant 16-inch, I believe it is, to a pair of those, and did it add anything? Or do you guys feel like, the reach, the transients, the impact of this speaker probably doesn't need a sub if you go for the biggest one?
We very independently develop speakers and subwoofers. In other words, I've always been asked, why wouldn't you make speakers that really need a subwoofer so that you can, quote, as a business case, sell more subwoofers? And that is not how we do it. We very independently developed these speakers. They were designed in a 2-channel environment to be a completely satisfying experience without a subwoofer. That said, no passive full-range speaker can deliver the extreme low frequencies of a high-quality subwoofer. So, and especially in a home theater environment, in my setup with my Ultra Evolution Pinnacles, when I listen in 2-channel, it's a pristine 2-channel scenario with no home theater receiver, with amp, preamp, turntable, and streamer, no subwoofer. When I use it in a home theater setting, then it has our Flagship subwoofers with it, and that works out really well.
Do you guys, this one is another bit of a trick question perhaps, but do you have an amp recommendation for the speakers that you just found had a great synergy?
I think it's an excellent question. I get asked this question all the time, and because our speakers are in the world of audiophile pricing, they're relatively affordable. I get asked, hey, is there any point in connecting these speakers with really high performance ancillary gear? And here's the thing I would say. They are not a difficult load. They're going to work fine with a quote-unquote mid-fi receiver or affordable separates. I have my Ultra Evolution Pinnacle speakers with a very high performance Mark Levinson amp and preamp with a really wonderful Lin turntable with a Koetsu cartridge. And they also reflect the benefits of that ancillary gear. They're forgiving of quote-unquote mid-fi performance. They sound great, but they shine with really reference ancillary gear. Yeah, I think 2 really groundbreaking performance attributes of the Ultra Evolution speakers are the acoustically centered time alignment of the towers, in the non-tower speakers, they're also time aligned. Because it's a very complex speaker, by shaping the front baffle to allow the speakers to be time aligned, it allows for a focused and very rock solid sound stage. And we marry that with this super high performance tweeter. It's a diamond coated aluminum dome. The benefits of a metal dome tweeter are outstanding detail, but sometimes people find metal dome tweeters to be a little bit fatiguing to listen to. And this diamond coating allows the speaker to not really distort until way beyond any content or anything that a human can hear, almost to 40,000 hertz. And because of that, the speaker is airy, it's detailed, but it's never fatiguing to listen to. So combine those two benefits of the high performance tweeter, best tweeter I've ever worked with by far, with this time-aligned front baffle, and you get accuracy, detail, and an extremely focused soundstage. And really circling back to what you started us with, Brian, a very satisfying experience. It's fun because you're hearing the music, movies, whatever thing that you love, in the most satisfying way possible. And I do this. I tell our team, I literally, when I'm home, if I have the ability to go down to the theater or to my 2-channel system, I look forward to hearing content I hadn't heard with these speakers because they consistently satisfy me with the joyfulness of that content, which I'm already familiar with how much I love it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I love that.
And Brian, if I can just plug, we're also doing some events that are coming up. So
Sure.
You can just go onto our website and check out our events page. But we're going to various dealers throughout the country where we're demonstrating home theater and 2-channel systems with our Ultra Evolution series, doing some giveaways. It's a great way to get boots in the door of some of our retail partners, but then also just let people experience and make new connections within the audiophile community, which is kind of what we started talking about at the top of the episode here. And I think we are just huge proponents of that and doing whatever we can to kind of get that rising tide to lift all boats. And it's fun for us to get on the road. Gary, what's your joke? We're just like a famous band without the fans. So.
We're rock stars without those annoying fans.
But we love to just show up and play music and let people experience, our products with different types of front end equipment, and it's just a lot of fun for us. So,
do you have the schedule in front of you there? Do you know what the next one is? Are you doing any more of this?
Yeah,
summer?
I don't know when this is going to air, but we're actually going to be in Bjorn's in San Antonio this Thursday, which would be July 18th. So this probably won't hit before then. Next week we're going to be in Columbia, Maryland, at one of the world really famous AV retailers called Gramophone. And then we have another event at Electronics Expo in Wayne, New Jersey coming up later in August. And then we have another one at Nebraska Furniture Mart. We're also going to be at Audio Advice Live, which is more of a multi-brand show, but that will be the first weekend in August. So we're still booking up other events. Oh, we have another one at Apt in Chicago. That's also in August. So all these dates will be on our site. And if you follow us on social or get our newsletter, they'll be well promoted there as well.
Oh, great. And I want to give you guys props out for probably during the pandemic and into now, having one of the best live streams done by a brand in the audio space, because it really pivoted well, I felt like, when things kind of went topsy-turvy there for a while. The numbers were incredible. Just did a really smart thinking at a time when everything was kind of going crazy. So you have a little happy hour that you still do. So if someone can't see you in real life, you guys still do some virtual stuff, don't you?
We do. We'll actually do these audiophile happy hours from the events that we're going to be hosting as well with the dealers. But we also have regular ones where it's Gary and myself and our director of technology, Ed Mullen, who did that subwoofer integration podcast with you a couple of years ago. And I think the reason it's worked is we're not selling anything. We're just there to answer questions. We had special guests from Major League Baseball, but also movie mixers and musicians, and it's like
even our competitors.
Yeah, we've even had competitors on just to talk shop. So it's like it's sort of this. I wouldn't say it lighthearted because we certainly do dive into some real.
We take it seriously.
Yeah, we take it seriously. We plan. Yeah, and we try to share information that's beneficial to home theater and hi-fi fans. But it's been fun for us too because we can see the kind of reception it gets, and it's definitely helped. Certainly during the pandemic, but it was going so well. We're just like, let's just keep rolling with this, and it's been great for the brand.
Cool. Well, thank you guys, Nick, Gary. Appreciate you coming on the show. Appreciate your time, and hopefully I'll get to see you, and we'll hang out again at the next show.
Hey, Brian, I want to thank you because your mission, in my mind, is similar to ours. We're always trying to bring new folks to the idea of great sound, and I think your work does the same thing. So thanks for having us be a part of this.
Today's episode of the Occasional Podcast is sponsored by Music Hall. For over 25 years, Music Hall has designed and built high-value, no-nonsense turntables. Audiophiles are told the more they spend, the better it gets, but Music Hall believes you can get great sound and build quality without breaking the bank. Their newest model, the Music Hall Stealth Direct Drive Turntable, was just awarded Part-Time Audiophile's 2023 Best Value Award. Editor Mark Phillips wrote, "It didn't take me long to realize a Music Hall Stealth turntable was a bit of a miracle. A great sounding direct drive table for a crazy low price." Music Hall remains a steadfast advocate for quality and affordability. Whether you're looking for your first or your last great turntable, do yourself a favor and visit musichallaudio.com to find your nearest authorized dealer or to order online with free shipping and a 30-day money-back guarantee. This episode of The Occasional Podcast is brought to you by Fernan Roby, a hi-fi designer, manufacturer, and dealer in Richmond, Virginia, where they have been producing heirloom-quality audio equipment and accessories since 2010. Each Fernan Roby piece is meticulously crafted for you to enjoy your favorite music with friends and family. Follow them at Fernan Roby on all social platforms for a behind-the-scenes look at their process, or visit fernandroby.com to see their craftsmanship for yourself.
Hey, everybody, thank you so much for joining us. We are in Emeryville, California. We are here on the beautiful inside bay, the east side of the bay in Emeryville, California. And I have two new and wonderful co-hosts for this audio show. We are at the California Audio Show 2024. And I have Mike and Tristan. Why don't you guys introduce yourself real quick so we know who you are?
I'm Mike. I am Hi-Fi Insider on YouTube. I've been in this hobby since I was a teenager in the early 90s.
And I'm Tristan. My channel is Photo Tristan on YouTube.
And we have just finished walking the glamorous halls of the Hilton here in Emeryville. And just to kind of start us off real easy, Mike, what were your expectations coming into the California Audio Show? Because it's not the biggest audio show in the U.S.
Yeah, I know that this is not a large show, which I actually prefer because I can spend more time in each of the exhibits, chat with other people behind the products that we like, and truly hear the products that are being shown here. I expect it to be a fun time for me, at least.
Yeah, I'm pretty much the same. I'm not much of a two-channel guy, so I was just kind of curious to see, what was here, what was all about, and kind of broaden my horizons a little bit.
So, being relatively new to the space, what did you take away from the really expensive system? You're like, okay, this thing's like $50,000, $60,000. What did that high end, what we like to call it, sound like to you? Did it sound in terms of your expectations?
It had a really good presence. Like one of the rooms had like really huge electrostat speakers, and I was like, wow, this has quite a presence. This is like, this is definitely fill up the room really nicely and just like awesome.
So we are at a show that does not have many rooms. So we're actually, instead of our usual ring-a-roll where we talk about a different stuff, we're actually going to run you through room by room because there are enough rooms here where we can do that in a podcast without it being too much of a giant sample of audio food to eat. So we're going to start on the 12th floor. So room 1211, the parlor suite, Gestalt Audio, Wolf von Lange speakers, Lotus Group, SWIX Audio Design, Amp V Titan SP DHT integrated amplifier, VDT 4-valve digital transport player and music streamer, Pranawire cable system. Tristan, what did you kind of make of that room? What was your first one?
I thought it was a really strong sounding system. The acoustics obviously in these shows play a big part into it. So it's kind of like if they treat the room well, then it'll sound better and stuff like that. If I remember correctly, that room might have had the air conditioner on while we were playing. Yep. So the noise floor was a little bit higher than I would have liked to be able to really hear the system 100%. But I thought it was a really strong sounding system, certainly over my budget, of course.
Well, I think that the ambiance there was good because they had the windows open and they had a view. Oh, yeah. And they had the AC going, and it's a bigger room. So you walk in, it's kind of got a vibe going. People seem pretty happy. The two gentlemen running the room had pretty, positive, fun attitudes, and I thought the sound was good. It felt like a high-end show. Sure. I'm not saying I haven't heard better, But I also got the vibe of like, okay, we're at an audio show. It's not the biggest, but they got really premium sound. I was quite impressed with that one. I thought they pulled it off. They had a lot of doohickeys. They had a lot of perhaps the most exotic record weight I've ever seen. It was about 6 inches, maybe 8 inches tall off the record spinning, and a couple of noise dissipation grounding devices and this kind of stuff, and really big thick wires. But the end result was it did sound good. And so I thought that particular room, is one of my top tier sounds of the show, but also, top tier pricing. So at least it had that. The thing I like to avoid is when something's super expensive and then it's like, ooh, it wasn't that case to me. Exactly. It was expensive and it sounded good.
The cables are very, very extravagant.
They were pure silver, by the way. Silver.
They looked very impressive. They looked expensive. I would like these exhibitors to actually put the prices of this stuff out.
There is no pricing listed anywhere. Every room, no what we like to call like price list for the media, nothing for the consumer, no prices anywhere. This is probably the biggest drawback for the show. It's not the size for me, it's the fact that I couldn't figure out what the who nanny anything costs. And I know what some of it costs, and I'm just like, what? Not in a single, no pricing anywhere. And that, honestly, I know why it's done, but it's still not done that often at audio shows.
I just don't want to fall in love in something that I can't afford.
And so that was definitely a major issue. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, especially when I'm not familiar with these brands, so I have to, remember what I looked at, take pictures of it, and then go home and hopefully find the price sheet or something that gives me a ballpark of what we're looking at, right?
In one room that I won't say who, but there was a room I went into and I asked the price, and they started like playing jokes, like, "Oh, it's exactly $100 a pound." Wink, wink. I go, "No, really, what's the price?" "Oh, $100 a pound." I go, "If I ask you a third time, then I'm going to stop asking." And they kept joking. I never found out the price. They were like totally effing with me in the room, and no pricing. And even when I asked, I got no pricing. So that bit was weird, because normally it's like, here's the list, here's what it costs. No games in that respect, but I get what you're saying. Like, if you don't want to fall in love with something, I know they're trying to avoid certain things. They want you to fall in love with it without knowing the price, and then, this is aspirational or whatever. That's their prerogative. But for me, as a news reporter on the scene, not having that key piece of information is very distracting from my job. So that's all I got to say on the subject, but
Another thing that I find interesting also, there's nobody streaming anything here in terms of music source. Yeah. They're playing CDs or records. I like it because I'm a CD guy, and you don't have to worry about the bandwidth problem of streaming music service, right? It's very nice to see old technology being used again.
I 100% agree. There's tons, more than the usual audio show, CD Red Book spinning. Yeah. Because there was no streaming, I don't think any streaming option, and I totally loved it. I was like, dude, this is different. It's good. It's like, you want something, can't have everything. There's like, what do you want to listen to? And I said, the first room I sat down, and they, what do you want to listen to? I said, here's my reference track, stream it. Oh, they go, oh, no, I don't have that, but I have this. I'm like, yes, I love being denied what I want. So yeah, they are spinning Redbook CD here all over the place. There is some vinyl, but it is mostly either CD or vinyl, and it's been rock and roll the whole time. Good selection, surprising selection for me in some, but good stuff everywhere. You could have whatever. On that note, though, I do want to say, even though there's not that many rooms, so it's kind of like a little bit of a cheat, the diversity has been pretty good in terms of the reference tracks that have been played. Mm-hmm. When I've requested something, I've heard rock and roll. I've heard some strange stuff in the audio note room in a good way. Like, oh, this guy's like pushing the envelope. We heard some David Bowie in the audio note room. And we also heard, well, the one we were talking about was there was a lot of chimes. That's a kind of an audiophile. Yeah. Doohickey, yeah. Bing, 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 spatial cues. Listen to the way it sounds. It's dancing around the room. I get it. It's a good trick. But no, it was not a song. It was much just like I'm sitting in the back row of a church going crazy. But, Okay, room 1218. So we're on the 12th floor still, 1218. This is the audio note room that I was just talking about. They had the AN-E SPX LTD, the field coil speakers they've been working on. We've heard those a couple of times. Really powerful, great pair of speakers, but with the same footprint as the regular line. The TT3 PSU4 ARM3, IO Gold, and ANS9 SUT, and a CD transport. The CD 3.1X/2, and this was the CD transport room. This was the one that had David Bowie going. And I would say for me, of all the times that I've heard Audio Note, this one sprung out to me as being, maybe it's just because there was less crazy awesome rooms. It was just because there was less rooms here. I thought they were performing at a top tier bandwidth. They were performing a top tier clip where I was like, oh, this is that Audio Note sound that I want. And they did the same thing that they always do, but is unusual, which is heavy toe in, and I mean heavy toe in, and pushed up against the corners of the room. I think you guys both said earlier that this was your first experience with them. What was your takeaway from the Audio Note room?
Yeah, I thought it was quite impressive for the size of those things. And I asked the rep, what's the sensitivity on them? They're actually quite easy to drive at 87 dB. So you can drive it with any standard solid state or even a good size tube amp. And if you're tight on space, if you're in an apartment or something, these little guys really kick. I actually found them to be a bit more of a near field kind of sound profile to me, but it was very dynamic, very clean. Did not sound fatiguing at all, even at a high listening level that they played it at. So I was impressed.
Yeah, I would agree with that too. I mean, I think they did a really good job with the room setup, and like you said, the toe-in sounded really precise in terms of the sound. But also, like when they were playing in digital source, to me it sounded like quite analog, which is, oftentimes you can't really tell the difference, but sometimes I think I can. So
that's a good observation. They were actually, I don't know if you guys know, it was a 300B integrated that they had that, but it was not exposed tubes. So it was this huge cage, and it just looked like a regular, really tall component, but it was a 300B hidden underneath there. And I thought they did a really good job. Like you guys both said, like the 300B sang, and again, really good point about it working the room right. These rooms can be really hard to manage, and they had it going on like Donkey Kong. I thought it was like, yeah, because you don't know coming in what the hell's going to go down. So, all right, that's Audio Note. Now, moving to the 11th floor. Ready? 1107, Audio Cafe system, Clarisys Piccolo ribbon speaker system, Westminster Lab, REI, pure Class A monoblocks, Westminster Lab Quest preamp, Westminster Lab Oreo alloy cable system, Lampezator DAC, and they look like a pair of blue sailboats to me. I don't know. That's why I thought, hey, check out the photos up on Part-Time Audiophile if you get a chance. They were a thin. Are they
I think they're ribbon.
The ribbon.
I believe ribbon. I was pretty blown away by that system, actually. But yeah, this was definitely one of my favorites, for sure.
And I think the most surprising thing, and the gentleman who was running the room also expressed this, is there were no subs. They had some bass traps in the back to kind of think. So they took some time to fix up the room with some sonic treatment, paid off. And again, this was one of the rooms. There's only two of these that had a suite, all windows on one side, well managed, so care, and then pretty darn good bass for a panel size like that. I thought it had a good bass response, good mids, but no, they didn't try to override the thing with the subs. There was no sub. And they could have done subs. And there's nothing wrong with doing subs or a sub-module pattern. None of that. Full sounding. Granted, the panel is very expensive and very large. But for that technology, it typically isn't known for good bass. I'd have to say they did a darn good job considering the media they chose, the speaker tech, and the room.
And the exhibitor wasn't shy about, limiting you to what type of music that he wants you to listen to. So people were requesting the type of music genre that they like to hear. Considering, even though I've been in this hobby for so long, I've never seen this before.
So they were on display at Exponent, but I missed them. So this was actually, for me, my first time seeing them too. I think it's relatively.
And that's what I love about these small shows. That, like you said, they were at Exponent, but you couldn't get a chance to see them because it was so crazy there, right? But here, you can spend half a day here if you like in the room. I really marveled at the build quality of the panels. I mean, geez, that machine, all aluminum panel is out of this world. I mean, it looked expensive.
Yeah.
One thing that I kind of wish that they would do was to elevate it up more to a more ear level, because everyone was sitting in tall, conference room chairs, and it was a bit low. And when I bent down a little bit to listen to it more directly, it sounded a lot more open to me. But they do make a higher model that's taller.
Yep.
So if that's a concern, then you can always go with the bigger ones.
Yep.
And I think the ribbon drivers too is pretty unique too. That's like a pretty rare driver material, And I think in general, ribbon speakers tend to sound really smooth and just really nice. So
None of the rooms were fatiguing at all.
No.
And they played loud.
Yeah. Obviously, people, as they get older, they lose the top end a little bit more. We all know this is a thing that happens. And I don't even fault people for this, they tend to make up for that by pushing a little more treble. And what ends up happening is every once in a while you go into a room, you're like, None of that. Not a single one in the whole show was overcompensating on the high end to try to get an older crowd to appeal to more. So I hope no one came away from the show thinking there was rolled off top end, because to me, everything was pretty smack dab right at the right place it should have been.
Great clarity.
Yeah. Okay, now we go into something pretty special, I think. Not something I see every day, but this gentleman has definitely been around. Audience AV and Atmosphere. It was the Audience AV Clairaudient 1+1 V5 mini monitors, Audience AV front row cable system, Atmosphere MP3 balanced tube it's not MP3, but it's the MP-3. Not the best choice for branding, if you ask me. Balanced tube preamplifier, Atmosphere, GAN-FET, Class D monos, and an MSB DAC. If you guys follow the podcast, I talk about GAN-FET, Class D ad nauseum. But I wanted to say I was very excited to see it in use. So we're like shooting 100%. Every audio show has it. It's one of those things, whether you like it or not, it's a growing part of the ecosystem. It's appearing at every single show, even a small show like this one. And these had a great sound. I cannot express this enough. If you can't see the photos online and you're just listening to the podcast, I encourage you to go and see them. They're very tiny. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and say they are the smallest speaker I've ever seen at an audio show. What do you think?
Yeah, they were tiny.
They had a small driver in the front and then two passive subs on either side, but pretty big sound for the size. Would you guys agree?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think the drivers, I think I heard him say they were like 3-inch drivers or something like that, the main drivers. But yeah, they had a big sound for the size of the speakers. I did kind of notice when he was pushing them really hard, there was a little bit of harshness on the highs. I think, just because of the driver's size and how hard he was really pushing them. But that was only the only time I heard that. The other times it was a really good sound for the size of the drivers.
Yeah, I thought it was impressive staging, because that's what my expectation is going on. Like, what is this going to sound like? Is it going to be constrained or is it going to be big? And I thought he did a really great job on that. He had excellent selection of music, and I'll say it was packed in there, man. Yeah. Every time I tried to go in there, and at 4K, it had to be one of the least expensive speakers available at the show. So what do you got? You got something that's actually, save up a few weekends, depending on your income, that kind of speaker, plus easy to hide or just set up. Yeah. So there's a lot of wins on that account.
And the rep said that you can even put them right up against the wall and they'll sound big still.
Yeah, that's cool.
And I believe it because it did sound really big in that room.
Yeah. So the other thing I wanted to say too is I did hear in one of those rooms a classic audiophile trope, which is a female vocalist singing a slowed down version of like a 70s or 60s rock song. And this one was particularly egregious in that it was really slowed down and really like, look how different we could be. And it was The Doors' Light My Fire, a personified trope, and then you take it like 10% farther than it needs to go. So one of my favorite rooms of the show on the main lobby as you come in the entrance was the Gold Ballroom, and that was Sound Lab, as represented by Sound Lab Electrostat Japan, Dr. Vinyl, and MA Recordings. So, I don't know, I feel like you guys had a really good time there. You spent some time. Mike, you want to kind of kick off what the room was?
That room is my favorite room of the show. I mean, the speakers are huge. Certainly, you have to have a big room for them, but they sounded like you're in a big concert. It didn't sound. It sounded effortless. It didn't sound confined at all. I really, really enjoyed that sound. That room. MA Recordings. They were playing superb. Mastering of the music. It's no compression. It's really good stuff. I mean, if I had the space for the speakers like that, I'd get them.
Consistency in panels. It's really kind of a weird deal because it's hard to fit in a room because they're so big, and as we spoke before, sometimes there's some issues with bass. But when you talk about resolution, soundstage, it always just kills me how good they are. But they're so giant that there's just a usability issue. Because oh man, you're right. But these are big panels. I would say the larger pair there was the biggest I've ever seen. So that's really. I just thought this is a show where I saw the biggest speakers I've ever seen and the smallest speakers I've ever seen.
Yeah, those big speakers are probably at least 7 feet tall, probably at least.
Yeah.
I would say.
Yeah.
I would think. I mean,
that was a killer room. I got a chance to hang out with Dr. Vinyl himself, and he's a really nice guy. He does turntable setups and a good showing room, good warm atmosphere. And since it's on the main drag here, it was just filled again. Another one where it's like standing room only on Saturday most of the day. And I'm just really impressed by that. Again, there's not a lot of space to go to here, but the people the people who were here looked like they were having a really good time, man. And then I had one dude, and I want to ask you guys this question. If you see someone's bag sitting on a table or something, is there a scenario where you move and touch the bag? Because I put my bag down. You guys know who follow the podcast that I have this issue where I put my bag down. I got to do my thing. I come back, and a gentleman has picked up my bag and is like holding it. And I go, "Hey, man, that's my bag." And he goes, "Oh, this is yours." And I was just thinking in my head, like, is it unusual to touch someone else's bag? Because I don't know. What do you think, Mike?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's not something I would do. I do find it really odd that you would, handle somebody else's stuff, even though it wasn't even in your way on the table, and you decide you need to move it somewhere or hold it. It was like weird.
It was strange. So that was a strange. That was my only little thing. And I've had worse, but yeah, that was my thing where I was like, oh, this dude just decided to take my bag, and then because I don't know what he was actually doing with it, but he kind of looked like he got caught doing something, and he was a little bit like, oh, here it is. I was like, did I just catch a theft? I don't even know.
yeah, you have to be careful. Sometimes stuff does get stolen that way, in shows.
Yeah, people do have sticky fingers at audio shows because they know that it's going to be crowded. And, people are mostly generous, and sharing the space and letting you hear things. And when they're not looking, people do have sticky fingers.
Yeah, that is unfortunate. There has been some instances, and then things that were such high ticket value, especially I know at the headphone shows, high ticket and small pocketable. You know what I'm saying? So it's like the double whammy, really high and easy to like just whatever. So yeah, I would actually find it quite hilarious if someone tried to walk out of here with those $60,000 panels. But don't steal, guys. It's terrible business. It's not good. It's not good karma at all. So, Mike, what was your favorite overall room and why?
Mine is definitely the Sound Lab room, big panels. The music that they play was from MA Recordings, and I know that Todd at MA, he is the master at recording live music that's not compressed. That room is my favorite, and I want to go back and listen to some more.
Right.
That's the thing.
Can we wrap this up, Brian? I got to go back in there and listen. Tristan, what was your favorite?
Mine was probably the ribbon speakers.
That is, he's referring to the Clarisys Piccolo ribbon speaker system and Westminster amplification.
To me, those just sounded just awesome and in some ways over the top for me. But yeah, they were just an awesome sound. Just so clear and impactful.
All right, so if you're taking that guy, then I'm going to back up to the Gestalt audio room with Wolf Van Langa speakers from Lotus Group. They were a fresh reminder of what the high-end sounds like, along with the one that you mentioned too. Those two I felt like were a nice heavy dose of high-end at a small show. So that was like really fun, and they managed their rooms well. They kind of felt like the room runners knew what they were doing. They managed reflections. They had a beautiful view. They ran the AC enough. Because that's one thing I will say. There was this duality involved. When you went into those rooms, there was a high nose floor, undoubtedly, because they were running AC. But it was cool. And they had sun pouring in the window, right? Mm-hmm. But it was cool, it was comfortable, and good vibes. There was one room, I won't say who, no AC for that reason. Yes. You walk in there, and it was stuffy, musty, And then I bet if you come in the late day, it's going to smell like BO in there. To no one's fault other than the fact that ACs make noise. Yeah. And that's how it is. And this is the situation we're in. But no noise floor. But sound was good, but I kind of wanted to get out. It just makes me like a little not as comfortable. And I'm very comfortable hanging out in the AC room all day. Mm-hmm. So there is that duality, and you saw both sides of it. But I think it's a victory either way. You go in early in the morning or late or whatever, have them prop the door, or you can just say, hey, let's turn on the AC for a little bit. And they were in between songs. So basically they would take a break, run the AC, take chit-chat. Then when the crowd came, they'd run it again. But
before we wrap up, I do want to say something about these audio shows. When you want to try something at a retailer, a store, you kind of feel like you're obligated to buy something because you're there for however long to audition things. At an audio show, you can sit here all day long and nobody's going to ask you if you're going to buy something or not. Yeah. And that's what I love about these shows, is that there's no obligation to buy anything. You do get to chat with the manufacturer, the people behind the products. Yep. Where you go to a retailer as the dealer. They don't have the direct information that you might be seeking. So these audio shows are a lot of fun, and even if you have to travel quite a distance to get to one of these, it's still better than buying something and trying to return it later, right? Because packing up a pair of speakers to return is not that easy.
It is tough to manage the rooms, but these guys try really hard to do it. And if you wait till Sunday, as I say all the time, you wait till Sunday, they've had 3 days to tweak it. And I was actually talking with Dr. Vinyl, and he was saying he doesn't turn off anything. He leaves that gear on from the morning they snap it on Thursday till they shut down on Sunday. They do not turn off the amps, even if they're tube. They let that run all weekend. And so what you get, according to him, is just a really good sound on Sunday. And they've also done too. So that is always the thing we say at every show. Check it out on Sunday.
How can you experience, multi-$1,000 systems or even $1 million systems? You don't get to do that.
Well, Mike, don't you just cut the check out of your multiple checking accounts?
You go to the store, even the retailer, they may not even have this stuff, right? So you get to experience something that's so nice that and you get to chat with some of the people behind it. Yeah. Pick their brain. When
I want to hear a high-end system, I usually just dig something out of Mike's trash.
I'll send you the stuff I upgrade from.
Disney Body just kicks it out to the curb. I was like, oh, man.
Yeah, I thought it was really cool and interesting and neat to experience the different rooms and different equipment. And I liked, there was nothing that sounded bad here whatsoever. Everything sounded just great. Yeah, it's just when you're dealing with this kind of level of stuff, it's just like if you have to choose one, but they all sound so good. Yeah.
Mike, any final takeaways?
No, I think everyone should at least, visit one of these shows at least once. Bring your family. If you tell your wife or spouse the real dollar amount of your stuff, then then it's okay to bring them because they'll find out how much this stuff costs.
Cool, man. Mike and Tristan, thank you so much for helping out with the show. It was great to kind of jump around with you guys.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
The Occasional Podcast is a production of the Part-Time Audiophile Network, which includes parttimeaudiophile.com, The Occasional Magazine, the PTA newsletter, and audiohead.com. You can stay in touch with us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. The Occasional Podcast is produced and hosted by Brian Hunter, executive produced by Scott Hall at PTA Productions. The Occasional Podcast and its original associated music is monitored, mixed, and mastered on the Focal Trio 6 BE studio monitors. AI songs produced by Udio.com. If you haven't already, please subscribe to The Occasional Podcast on iTunes, Google, Spotify, or wherever your favorite podcasts are downloaded.